Welcome to the debate. We are diving straight into a pretty universal struggle today, the plateau. Specifically, that really frustrating, paralyzing gap between, knowing the grammar of a language and actually being able to speak it. We're looking at the A2 to B1 learner, someone who can read the textbook, they can pass the test, but you put a real person in front of them and suddenly just silence.
Right. It's the classic freeze. The brain just locks up. You know the words, you know they're floating somewhere in your head, but you just can't access them in real time.
Exactly. So today we're analyzing the English upgrade methodology and this framework of the 50 daily sentences. The central inquiry is this: how do you break that silence? Is the mechanism of improvement found in acquiring a survival inventory, a specific set of high-frequency phrases to use as a kind of shield? Or is it a more fundamental cognitive restructuring designed to, well, kill the translation process entirely?
And that is the crux of it. I mean, are we building a library of scripts to memorize, or are we upgrading the operating system of the brain itself?
I'm here to argue for the inventory. The material we've reviewed convinces me that for the intermediate learner, fluency is repetition. You just can't think your way out of a panic response. You need a weapon. You need specific memorized power sentences that, bypass the brain's freeze response.
And I'm taking the opposing view. I believe the material points to a much deeper truth, that memory, on its own, is a trap. The true upgrade involves stopping the translation. It's about techniques like narrating your day and shadowing to build that cognitive efficiency. If you're just relying on a script, you aren't fluent. You're just rehearsing.
Well, let's get into it. I want to start with the freeze. The source material introduced by Ryan and Mary, it identifies this immediately. Learners understand the input, but they freeze on the output. My position is that this isn't, a lack of intelligence, it's a lack of ammunition.
Ammunition? That implies a battle.
It feels like a battle to the learner. I mean, when you are in the middle of a conversation and your mind goes blank, you don't need a theory on sentence structure. You need a reflex. The 50 daily sentences framework isn't just vocabulary, it is a safety net. The text outlines 4 domains: basic conversation, work, shopping, and social life. And my argument is that by rote memorization of these specific blocks, you lower the cognitive load. If I know I'm running late, or can you help me, as a single sound unit, not a collection of words, but a single block, I can survive the interaction. And survival builds confidence. Action, as the text says, breeds confidence.
I understand the appeal of the safety net. I really do. It feels good to have something in your pocket. But I think it misses the diagnosis of the problem. The material explicitly discusses the translation delay. This is the real enemy. It's that split second, or sometimes, 5-second gap where the learner hears English, translates it into their native language, formulates a response in their native language, translates it back to English, checks the grammar, and then tries to speak.
Which is exactly when the freeze happens. The processor overheats.
Correct. But handing them a prepackaged sentence doesn't stop that process. It just masks it for 5 seconds. If the other person asks a follow-up question that isn't in your script, you crash. The upgrade described in the text, it advocates for thinking in English. It suggests exercises like looking at a table and thinking table, not translating it. It suggests shadowing, listening to audio and speaking along with it in real time. This actually rewires the brain to generate language, not just retrieve files.
But you're talking about a long-term architectural change. I am talking about the person who has a job interview tomorrow or who needs to navigate a grocery store today. You can't rewire your brain in an afternoon, but you can memorize 10 sentences.
That's a fair point. Immediate utility versus long-term gain. But let's look at the utility of that basic daily conversation set you mentioned in the material.
Okay, let's do that. Ryan and Mary list phrases like, I'm doing well, thank you, I'm just relaxing, and maybe most importantly, I don't understand.
The I don't understand phrase is dangerous if that's all you have. It just stops the conversation cold.
I disagree. I think it's a pivot. The material analyzes a model interaction between the hosts. Their conversation is fluid. Why? Not because they're using complex poetry, they're using very simple sentences. I'll call you later, no problem. These are blocks. My argument is that the freeze happens because the learner is searching for content and grammar at the same time. If we remove the search for content, if the phrase "I don't understand" or "Can you help me" is automatic, the anxiety drops, the panic just dissipates because the brain isn't multitasking.
But look at why they are effective. The material says fluent speakers are not more intelligent. They are more efficient. Efficiency isn't about having a canned response. It's about processing speed. The text advises learners to start small. If I can look at a situation and generate a simple thought instantly, that is robust. If I rely on a script, I'm fragile. The material compares the brain during translation to a computer running too many programs. It overheats.
Exactly. So why force the brain to write code in real time? Give it a pre-compiled program. If I am tired and I need to tell someone that, I shouldn't have to construct the sentence subject I, verb am, adjective tired. I should just be able to fire the "I'm a little tired" script.
Because life doesn't follow a script. What if you aren't a little tired? What if you are exhausted? If you've only memorized the one phrase, you're stuck. You've limited your own reality to fit your limited vocabulary. But, okay, let's move to a context where scripts are perhaps more forgivable: the workplace and public places.
Right. Sentences 11 through 30. This is where the inventory approach really shines. We're talking about functional, high-stakes environments. The material lists specific power sentences here. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Can we reschedule the meeting? I need more time.
Those are very transactional.
They are powerful. Imagine you're in a meeting. Your boss asks you for a report you haven't finished. If you try to translate your excuse from your native language, you might stutter, use the wrong tense, and look incompetent. But if you have the survival inventory locked in, you look the boss in the eye and say, "I need more time. Let me check."
This sounds confident.
It is confident. My position is that in a busy coffee shop or a meeting, nobody cares about your cognitive processing speed. They care about the transaction. The material instructs the listener, don't just listen once, practice 10 sentences per day. This is about muscle memory. If you're standing at a register and the cashier is just staring at you, you need, "Can I get a receipt?" or "Do you accept cards?" to roll off a tongue without a single neuron firing about grammar.
I agree that high-frequency transactions benefit from automation. I will grant you that. However, I read the material's advice on simplicity differently. It talks about small talk and opening questions, things like "busy day, nice place." It explicitly says, instead of building complex thoughts, use short ideas.
Which supports my point about simple sentences.
No, I think there is a nuance you're missing. The advice isn't just to say short things, it's to think short things. My argument is that the upgrade is about aligning your thought process with your speaking ability. If I want to ask for a receipt, but in my head I am thinking in my native language, "Excuse me, would it be possible for you to provide me with a proof of purchase?" And then I try to shoehorn that into, "Can I get a receipt?" I'm still translating. I am still burning energy.
But if the output is the same, does it really matter?
It matters for what comes next. The goal is to see the receipt and think, "Receipt, boom. Can I get a receipt?" The power isn't in the phrase, it's in the efficiency of the thought that preceded it. If you're just reciting, "That makes sense," or "I agree with you" in a meeting, but internally you are writing a dissertation in your native language, you are going to crash eventually. You are running a simulation of fluency, not fluency itself.
I think you're asking for a level of, Zen-like mental discipline that most beginners just can't muster yet. They're trying to keep your job, not achieve enlightenment. But let's test this in the hardest arena of all, social life. Sentences 31 through 40.
The connect with people section.
Right. Nice to meet you. Where are you from? That sounds interesting. Really? Tell me more. Now, social anxiety is real. You want to make friends. You don't want to look foolish. My argument is that having "that sounds interesting" ready to go allows the learner to participate. It allows them to listen, nod, and deploy a connector. It buys them time to breathe.
It buys them time, but does it buy them a connection? I challenge the idea that you can script a relationship. "That sounds interesting" is a generic placeholder. If you use it 3 times in a row, you're going to look like a robot.
Better a robot than a mute. If I have, what do you like to do for fun and how long have you lived here? In my inventory, I can initiate. I can start the ball rolling. The material asserts, and I quote, conversation becomes easier when you have ready sentences. It lowers the barrier to entry.
Is it a barrier to entry or is it a barrier to authenticity? I mean, the material also highlights a technique called narrating your day. It suggests saying things like, I am making coffee, I am checking emails while you are actually doing them.
That sounds like talking to yourself, not connecting with others. How does saying, I am making coffee, help me talk to a stranger at a party?
Because it trains the generative skill. True connection is about sharing your reality. If I want to tell you about my life, I can't just look at a list of 50 phrases. I need the ability to describe what I'm doing and feeling. Narrating your day trains the brain to turn observation into speech instantly. That is how you eventually say something like, I'm working on a big project and it's stressful, rather than just nodding and saying, that sounds interesting. The inventory is reactive. The cognitive shift is active.
I see the logic, I do, but I think you underestimate the sheer terror of the active approach for a beginner. If they can't react, they can't stay in the conversation long enough to even get comfortable. The learner needs to feel safe before they can feel creative.
Safety is an illusion if it relies on a script. But let's look at how the material handles the emotional side of this. Point 4. Addressing the fear of mistakes.
The material is very clear here. Mistakes are part of the journey.
It is, but saying don't worry doesn't actually stop the worry.
Which is why the inventory provides a solution for that too. Sentences 41 through 50 deal with emotional and daily life expressions. Phrases like, I'm a little nervous, I'll do my best, and I'm proud of you.
And also, it's not a big deal, and don't worry about it.
Exactly. My position is that these specific sentences give the learner the vocabulary to own their anxiety. If I can look you in the eye and say, in perfect English, I'm a little nervous, but I'll do my best, I have diffused attention. I have validated the whole fake it till you make it approach. I don't need to be perfect, I just need the script to apologize for my imperfection.
That is a clever use of the script, I'll grant you that. Using the tool to apologize for the lack of tools. But the mindset shift described in the text goes further. It's about prioritizing communication over perfection. I would argue that the upgrade isn't about having the perfect phrase to excuse yourself. It's about the willingness to speak imperfectly but without the shame. The material notes that one sentence spoken confidently today is better than 100 silently repeated in your head.
And we agree on that.
But I argue that the reliance on the script actually reinforces the fear. It implies that unless I say it perfectly like the recording, I shouldn't say it at all. If I rely on I'll do my best as a crutch, I might be afraid to say I try hard because I haven't memorized that one. The cognitive approach, shadowing, narrating, thinking in simple concepts, it encourages a messy, organic growth. It creates a speaker who is resilient, not just prepared.
And I argue that messy often feels like failing to a learner. They need the win. They need the small win of a perfect sentence. When Ryan and Mary role play and they say, see you tomorrow and no problem, it sounds crisp, sounds professional. That is what the learner wants. They want to sound like that.
They want the result, yes, but are they willing to do the process? The process isn't just memorization. It's the uncomfortable work of breaking that translation habit.
But can we agree that the 50 sentences are at least the entry point?
We can agree they are a tool, but let's look at the implementation. The material says practice 10 sentences per day. It says use them in real life.
Even if it feels uncomfortable. That right there is the key instruction.
Yes, and that is where the rubber meets the road. If you memorize, that's a great question, or it depends, you have to actually use it when the moment arises.
And that takes us right back to the survival instinct. If I have the weapon, I am more likely to step into the arena.
Or if you have trained your reflexes, you don't need the weapon.
We're at an impasse on the mechanism, but maybe not the goal. Let's bring this to a close. We've looked at the freeze response, the necessity of muscle memory in transactions like shopping and work, the mechanics of social connection, and the emotional management of mistakes.
To summarize my perspective, the 50 daily sentences are training wheels. They're shiny, they're helpful, and they keep you upright. But if you never take them off, you never learn to balance. The translation delay, is the gravity you have to beat. And the only way to beat it is by rewiring the processing speed through narrating, through shadowing, and stopping that internal translation. That is the only path to true fluency. You have to stop translating apple and start seeing apple.
And I remain convinced that for the A2B1 learner, you cannot learn to ride the bike if you are too terrified to even get on the seat. Action breeds confidence. The inventory provides the immediate, tangible survival mechanism. You need to know where is the restroom and do you accept cards to function in the real world. Thinking in English is the destination, absolutely. But repeating clearly and having that inventory ready is the vehicle that gets you out of the driveway.
I suppose the best approach might be to use the vehicle to get to the gym where you do the mental workout. Use the scripts to survive the day, but use the cognitive exercises to build the future.
A fair compromise? If you can survive the meeting with, "Can we reschedule?" you buy yourself another day to practice thinking in English.
Precisely. And looking at the source material, there is one model that I think unifies both our positions. It appears at the very end of the lesson.
Speak with power.
Be understood everywhere.
Whether you are building your inventory of 50 sentences or cleaning up your cognitive processing to stop translating, the goal is the same: to be heard.
Indeed, there is always more to explore in how we learn.
Thank you for joining the debate.
Until next time.